Hi, I'm Marcus Fairs, founder and editor-in-chief of Dezeen, and I'm broadcasting live from our studio in London. Today, I'm talking to architect Stefano Boeri about his new book called Green Obsession: Trees Towards Cities, Humans Towards Forests. Stefano is joining me live from Milan. Hi, Stefano.
Hello, Marcos. How's it going?
How are you? And where are you? Is that your office you're speaking from?
Oh, we are in Milano. Yes, it's a sunny day, a little bit cold, but amazing. And we are here basically working and exchanging ideas and thoughts. And you?
Tell us, well, I'm good. I'm in the office. It's also a sunny day in London, not too cold. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do for any of the people watching who don't already know.
Well, it's very simple. I'm an architect based in Milano, and well, I'm at the moment also the president of the Triennale of Milano, which is probably, it's a cultural institution who was founded 100 years ago in Milano, Italy, who's part of the BIE. And basically my activity, well, it's has always been, let's say, related with, I think, the idea to gather people and ideas and to act a kind of chief editor. So I think what I'm really able to do is to select people and make people in the best condition to produce as work as possible. So that's what I normally do, but always in the perspective of architecture as a, let's say, as a key entry to let's say, this was the war. So I also spent part of my life in politics. 10 years ago, I spent part of my life being the editor-in-chief of two architectural magazines, Domus and Abitare. But basically what I do is to be an architect.
And you're probably best known for the vertical forest, the Bosco Verticale, which is, towers, residential towers covered in trees. But you've been interested in nature and trees and botany for a long time, and that's kind of the key theme of your book. Tell us about your journey with nature.
Well, it's honestly, when I have been, let's say, obsessioned by trees, not exactly by nature, was not about, let's say, a passion for ecological issues at the beginning. It was more an obsession for trees and the fact that trees are individuals, and every tree has its own life trajectory, its own desires, its own needs, and its own shapes. So since I was a kid, I was, let's say, honestly, extremely attracted by the life of trees, and that's became an obsession. And I think what we share is the awareness that it's very important to feed and cultivate our obsession. And not only as architects, I think this is something which could be more general. And honestly, what I've done in the last 20, 30 years to try to share this obsession and cultivate it and transform this obsession also in a way to, let's say, make the relation between living nature and architecture more strong, and to imagine how living nature could become more closer to architecture, not as an ornament, not as a decoration, but as a basic component of what we do. So as a basic material, is not a good name, material, but we are used to work with stones, we are to work with glasses, we are to work with, and why not? We can imagine that living nature could and should become part of our spectrum of materials. So what I have done is simply to make this personal obsession a component of my practice, a component of my research, and a shared common value where we're acting. So basically, this is what I do, what I still do.
We're very honored today to help you launch your new book, which is called Green Obsession. And thank you very much. I have a copy here. Looks amazing. But I think it's best that you tell us about the book. You're going to give us a presentation now that talks us through the book and what it's all about. Do you want to share your screen with us now?
No, yes, the book, it's a book where, together with my colleagues in Stefano Boeri Architetti, in Stefano Boeri Architetti in China, and other friends, and we have, let's say, tried to first to gather the voices of some of the most, let's say, the relevant thinkers in the field of let's say, kind of attempt to create a new relation between the urban sphere and the natural sphere. So that's the reason we have asked people like Jane Goodall or Paul Oken or David Miller or Harini Ajendra to let's say, to contribute to make this obsession in a way capable to be transmitted as a message for an attempt to reverse climate change, to reverse global warming, to make our life better, and to see how cities can become the protagonist of a very important campaign to reverse climate change. So I think we know well that cities are basically, I think, if we could put together all what is cities, so small, middle-sized, big city, metropolis, megalopolis, we can, if we could imagine to create a kind of urban Pangea, that's probably a nightmare, but well, we could probably cover not more than the 3-4% of the surface of the emergent lands of the planet, and we know at the same time that this 3% is producing the 75% of the let's say, CO2 or the carbon dioxide present in the atmosphere, which is at it's a origin of global warming. And so the reason we are studying the relation between forest and cities is there, because on the other hand, we know that forests are covering the 30%, and they absorb, and this is so important, 1/3 of the carbon dioxide that is produced every year by cities and other parts of the planet. So simply this should, let's say, should be an amazing reason to push us fast to do something in order to make our cities greener, because more we are in competition to enlarge the green surfaces, to, let's say, introduce forests and woodland in our cities, the more we are fighting the enemy in its own field, in a way. And that's a reason we are so, let's say, committed by this idea to make cities protagonists of a very strong to reverse climate change. And at the same time, I think that we have to consider that we have now many different, let's say, technological devices or technological tools that can help us to avoid to produce carbon dioxide, CO2. No, we have also developed, I think, in such a great way also what is about the capacity to absorb the energy from the sun for photovoltaic panel and so on. We have learned how to transform the energy of the wind. So, or thanks to geothermal plants, we are capable to use underground water to reduce the consumption of energy. So we have many, as architects, we have several different ways to avoid to produce new CO2. But when we talk about how we can absorb the CO2 that we have already produced, basically we have only trees, we have only forests, and well, I think this is such an important issue, and so this obsession, if you want, which is a personal obsession, it's a collective obsession, and at the same time now has become a large campaign which is involving many several citizens along the world. It has a very strong scientific base, no? in this attempt to make cities greener and to connect through biodiversity corridors different greener cities and different, let's say, natural parts of the world in order to improve not simply the quality of air, but also to try to reverse global warming, as much as possible. So the book is a little bit describing this attempt and using the voices of as I was saying, people like Paul Oken, which is an amazing environmental activist and a scientist, or Jane Goodall. Jane Goodall is, well, she's a hero basically, and she, in the book, she tries to explain how also when we talk about nature, we should now understand that we are part of it, and that this, let's say, very, very strong attitude to consider nature something which is outside our body, outside our homes, outside our buildings, outside our cities, or that can be and should be controlled, and perimeter parks or gardens and so on. So this idea of a dichotomy between us and what is nature, well, is now completely over, and that we have to completely change the perspective. And what Jane Goodall wrote about that, and together with other people like for instance, David Kopenawa, which is a shaman, and he's one of the leaders of the Yanomami tribe, the people in Amazonia. It's at the same time trying to let's say introduce another argument in favor of a different way to combine living nature and human sphere. So basically, what we do as architects, it's well, to try to contribute to this new perspective at different scales. So Bosco Verticale was a prototype at the beginning, was really something, but also for us was a test, and has happened with an experiment. We have learned a lot also from what we have done. And the Bosco Verticale in Milano is there since 2014, but the first trees are in the building since 2012. So basically it's 10 years, and 10 years is quite a long time that can allow us to study. And we have hosted many research centers, universities coming from all the world in this year, try to study what's happening in these two towers with more than 21,000 plants. And well, it's so important to study, observe, and learn from what we have done. And what makes my profession as an architect so passionate is that we decided to go ahead and to try to improve the first experiment, the first prototype. And so we are working now in many different parts of the world. And for instance, just to talk about vertical forest, we are trying to, let's say, to go ahead. And just to give you some example, in Eindhoven, we have in last October, the new vertical forest, which is in social housing. So it's affordable for everybody. And that for us, it's was an important challenge from the beginning. So we knew that the first Milano was a let's say very let's say not expensive but costly building. We had to work a lot on research to invest so much, and the developers that were helping us to do the first prototype were really investing so much. But we had in our mind from the beginning the, let's say, clear idea that we had to do our best to arrive to make this prototype building affordable. And that's what we have done here. The same we have done in China. We have just finished to open 2 towers that are, let's say, very affordable. And at the same time, we are now introducing a new issue, which is how we can make these buildings less to produce CO2 in the construction process. So how we can, using woods and timbers, make these buildings more sustainable, not simply because they absorb oxygen, not simply because they produce, they absorb CO2, they produce oxygen, not simply because they absorb the dust pollution or they reduce the heating process of the city, not simply because they are also, let's say, capable to implement biodiversity, but also because they can, let's say, avoid to produce CO2 during the construction process. And the use of wood from that point of view, it's also from the structure, let's say, as a structural material, is very important. And that's it. We are going ahead and now to try to make this prototype, this typology of buildings, this ecosystem, because basically they are ecosystem where we combine the life of plants with the life of humans and the life of birds and the life of insects. And to make this new concept of architecture affordable, innovative, more sustainable, also from the point of view of the production of energy. So what we are doing, for instance, with a new building in Milan to make it from an energetical point of view, self-sufficient, which is another very important step, using renewable energies together with the presence of plants. And that's it. At a different scale, a totally different scale, we are also now committed in the all what is about urban forestry and urban forestation, because we know that, well, vertical forests are like individual, let's say, presences and glimpse, but we need to imagine how to make cities greener. And in that perspective, what we have to do is really to implement the green surfaces. And so what we are doing in many cities where we have been asked to intervene is to show how it's possible to make the cities greenner. For instance, what we have done in Geneva, we have been asked to imagine to see the future of the metropolitan environment, and we have imagined to create a ring of green urban villages, which is, let's say, connecting Geneva and Annecy in French. But what makes this concept, I believe, interesting is that at the center of this new metropolitan environment, we don't have, let's say, a square or a church or a mosque, but we have a mountain. We have a mountain which is a bunch of biodiversity, and this system, this ring, this constellation of green urban villages which connects Annecy and Geneva is all around. But this is simply an example of what we do we're doing in other parts of the world. And this is some, let's say, there are some prototypes of forest cities that we are proposing for China. You know that in China, what's happened is that every year we have 14 million of people coming from the countryside that are coming to the city. And so we are trying to support a different model of urbanization, which is not to increase the peripheral suburban environments, but to develop a new concept of middle-sized forest cities that are surrounded by green environment. And again, this is something that we are now proposing for Mexico, southeast coast by Cancun, where 130,000 people, a city, it's let's say conceived as a forest city from the beginning with more than 7 million trees, and that's it. So that's probably another chapter what we do, which is present in the book. And finally, another important, let's say, part of what we do is it's about connection. So what David Miller is doing, David Miller is another author of the book, and Richard Weller. Richard Weller, you know him, he's an amazing thinker and teacher at Penn University, and he developed this idea of the world park. And what Richard says that we have to connect, the idea of connection, to connect the natural oases that are, and the most important biodiversity hotspots in the world, you see. And what he says that if we connect through biological corridors, thanks to forests, thanks to woodlands, these hotspots, we can multiply the advantages that this biodiversity hotspots can produce all over the world. And so we are now trying to translate this concept in different parts of the world. So we were in New York at the last global summit, global warming summit, and together with UN Habitat, C40, and Kew Gardens and FAO, we were proposing this idea to extend this biodiversity corridors to different parts of the world. You know that, for instance, in Africa, in the sub-Saharan area, we had this amazing green wool was started to be produced by African Union in 2007. Well, this concept should be, let's say, replicated, redefined in other parts of the world, and that's what we are now proposing for South Europe. And basically, the idea for instance, of a territorial park, we call it Parco Italia, which is crossing Italy, north, south, and east, west. It's from that in the same kind of style. So, you know, basically, the book it's mirroring our continuous oscillation between research and design, and that's another obsession. I think it's very important to understand that we have to host this two dimension inside us. So we have to act as researchers, and at the same time we have to act as designer. And normally this combination is quite complicated, because when you act as a researcher, you have always to gather ideas, to open the future, to introduce new materials, new ideas, new thoughts. When you act as a designer, you have to gradually reduce let's say, the possibilities of the future. You have to gradually define one unique configuration. And so these are two kind of opposite way to deal with the same field, with the same content, with the same place, with the same project in a way. So what I've learned is that this oscillation, this let's say combination, should not be put in a sequence, in a linear. So it's not true that if we want to be a good designer, we have first to be good analyst. At the same time, I think is not good also to do the opposite. It's not true that in order to be a good analyst, I have first to test the content where I'm acting through, let's say, ideas that are transformative ideas to projects. So basically, I believe in the schizophrenic relation of these two spheres. We have to host both of them inside us and let them act like sudden synapses, and that's the best way we have to produce new ideas. So the book is also this. It's a kind of continuous oscillation between our projects, our proposals, and ideas that we are gathering, and analysis that we are doing in different parts of the world. So I hope that what I try to explain is moment enough to make an idea of what the book is.
Thank you very much, Stefano. Do you want to unshare your screen now? First of all, I want to ask you about the vertical forest, the Bosco Verticale. You said the one that's already, the first one that was built in Milan was an experiment, and you've now built one in Eindhoven and China. So what are you learning with each one that you build? How are you able to improve the idea? I mean, if you were to be honest, were there any mistakes you made in the first one?
Oh, so many mistakes. I think it's was really a pioneer in realistic building, and just to give you some examples, at the beginning, the cost of maintenance of all what was green was quite high, and now we have learned how to not simply reduce but simply cut it. So thanks to a different system of irrigation, thanks to the fact that, for instance, we are now using a bunch of flying gardeners that are twice a year coming and take care of the plants instead of having a mechanical system of controlling the life of trees. So we have really learned also from what we were not to do in 2014 and 2012 and 2010, when we were really in the process of construction. Well, what we are also doing, you know, what makes a vertical forest so I believe unique is that every time you are asked to do something, to imagine a vertical forest, you have first to start considering the climate condition of the place. Why this? Because the selection of trees, if they are oaks, if there are olives, if there are shrubs, ash trees, maple trees, cornus mass, I don't know, botany is now part of our knowledge. It's based on climate conditions. So, and then so the second step is the selection of plants that we do together with our botanists like Laura Gatti and other friends that are collaborating with us. And then only at that point we start to design the facades of the building, where we are really treating every tree as a tenant, as a habitant. So we have to create the void between the balcony and the other, between the loggia and the other, considering the extension, the trajectory of life of every individual trees, individual plants. And I think this is a way also to give to the trees the same dignity that we to the humans. And this for us is a really principle, a very strong principle, what we do. And absolutely what we are now doing, for instance, when we have been asked, we are now building a vertical forest in the New Cairo, where the climate condition is totally different from the one we have in another construction site, which is in Utrecht in Holland, for instance. And well, you know, it's so important to have a very strong knowledge about what is possible to do and how to make the tree that put there in condition to live well. And then another very important principle is about criteria is about biodiversity. So we are always trying to combine different species of plants, not simply trees, but also shrubs and ground cover plants and other plants, in order to make this building acting as an ecosystem with a quite rich combination of different families and species of plants.
You said in your talk that initially you were obsessed with trees, not with biodiversity or not with ecology. But is that changing now? Because if you have a tree on its own, it's not much use to the planet, is it? It's nice to sit under the tree, it gives you shade, but it also can give life to insects and a home to birds and other species.
Yes, for sure. I have gradually understood that my first obsession was well, more let's say a kind of abstract passion for trees, and well, year by year I understood that well, how trees are helping us, how trees could help us, how trees in condition to help us in the future. And I also immediately understood that well, trees have some kind of mysterious way to dialogue, to create a connection, to create relations also among them, and that's amazing. So there are many, as you know, many, let's say, analysts that are saying that there is a very specific intelligence that are shared by trees and plants through the capacity that they have to transmit impressions through the use of roots or of branches. What we have observed in our building is that, for instance, when you have the different species of trees and you put them together, one closer to the other, they arrive to find a very proximity, but the leaves are always capable to keep a certain distance, so they never cross. And so it's like if they can really see the extension of the branch, but they don't see. They have different kind of perception, and they have a different kind of intelligence. And honestly, I believe that what we can do as architects in order to be in condition to observe the world from different points of view, considering that it's possible to imagine different kind of intelligences, it's an amazing target for all of us.
You said that you treat each tree as a tenant, but nature can be messy. Birds can poo, insects can get in your socks and things like that. So how do the human tenants get on with the natural tenants? Are there conflicts? Do the residents of Bosco Verticale get on the telephone and say, I want you to get rid of those sparrows or those insects?
I can confess that at the beginning, I was attracted by the idea to buy an apartment in the vertical forest, but honestly, I should not confess this, but at the beginning I was saying, well, no, it's better not to do that, because I was not so sure of the results of our a little bit utopistic dreams, but I was wrong. I think that basically the reaction of the tenants are absolutely, let's say, positive. It's amazing how people like to see the, let's say, the city, to see the skyline through the filter of branch, through the filter of leaves. That's amazing. It's something that I will. It's so great, and that's the reason I invite, when I have people coming in Milano or in Eindhoven or in China or in where we are building, I invite all with people to come and see the experience, to let's say to experience the way to observe the urban environment through the filter of living nature. But well, no, I think it's an ongoing in its ongoing project, an ongoing research, and I think it's basically the results are quite always positive.
There's a big conversation now, a big move towards having more wild areas. There's a rewilding movement. There's an understanding that to have biodiversity, you need to leave nature alone. But the trees on Bosco Verticale, they're gardened, aren't they? You have people coming and digging the weeds and cutting the branches. How do you feel about that tension between nature that is suitable for people and nature that is wild and out of control and more suitable for animals and insects?
I think we need both of them. In a certain way, you know, the presence of different species and the combination of species that are not, let's say, cultivated, controlled by us, is also a way to, let's say, implement our immunitarian defenses. That's such an important issue. I've just read which has tried to study the capacity of different, let's say, groups of kids that are used or not to spend their after school afternoon in a let's say in a courtyard which is completely mineral, or in a courtyard which has trees and green surfaces. And the second group has developed a humanitarian defense which is not comparable with the first. So I think we need, and I think that what we have learned from this tragic pandemic, it's so important. We need this richness of different species, that, and we need a certain kind of wildness also from that point of view. On the other hand, when we're also considering the life of animals, the life of other living species, which are not simply plants, we know well that the proximity that we have seen, for instance, during the lockdowns, or the proximity where we are seeing when we are invading parts of the world where wild animals were used to live alone, it's something which is very delicate. We have we cannot say, well, let's open everything. We can destroy any kind of borders. No, it's a very serious and delicate issue. But I think we have to change the way we are normally used to perimeter and find wildness, and at the same time we have to limit our extension, to limit the extension of our presence in the planet, and to understand that we have to leave part of the territory at the habitat for other species where we really have nothing to do. that's my idea.
You were talking as well about your push now to make sure that the building itself is as carbon limiting as possible. Is it possible to make a building that produces no carbon from its construction, or that even absorbs carbon because the trees do the work of removing the carbon that the construction created?
Well, in Venice Biennale 2008 or 2007, I was involving Jeremy Rifkin. Jeremy, he's a visionary person, and he really started 15, 20 years ago to see how buildings could become, let's say, energetical plants. So place where you are not simply, but you can produce clean energy through the use of the sunlight, through the use of wind, through geothermal plants and so on. But at the very time, we didn't have the perception that also the combination of this, let's say, mechanical devices together with plants could, let's say, become one of the stronger solution. But Jeremy's idea to invest on changing the nature of every buildings, to make buildings really the basic protagonist of this attempt to reverse climate change was anticipating other let's say the studies. So what I think is that, for instance, the use of wood, of timber for the structural component of the building is very important, is not enough. The use of solar panels on the roofs or on the facade is very important, is not enough. The use of, let's say, turbines that absorb the lateral energy of winds is very important, but it's not enough. The use of geothermal plant is very important, not enough. We have to do all this together. Basically, we have to do all this together. And this, let's say, this concept to let's do all together what is possible to do in all the different fields is something that we can, let's say, generalize to what we have to do also in terms of improving our life and try to make something to reduce the disadvantage of global warming. So we cannot simply act transforming the building. We cannot simply act changing our diets. We cannot simply act introducing more green surfaces. We cannot simply act changing from fossil to electric the energy, the mobility of our city. We have to do all this together now, as soon as possible.
And what about beyond the individual building? Because it's one thing to live in a building that's made of wood and has trees everywhere and supports nature. But if you're cooking with gas and then you have a car that you drive around in, or you take taxis everywhere, or you go on holiday 10 times a year and jump in a plane, how can you help people live more sustainable lifestyles through the services that they buy and the transportation and the workplace and things like that? Or is that too much beyond your?
No, I think it's well, just to go back to what I was saying, it's you cannot let's say define your contribution or limit your contribution to one's unique let's field. And what you were saying is it's absolutely true. So just to give an example, mobility it's crucial. So what we can do in order to reduce the number of private cars, what we can do in order to enlarge the number of private cars that use electricity instead of fossil carbon, it's so important. And this is important not simply for let's say, trying to reverse global warming, but it's also important to make our wealth condition better. So what we have learned from the COVID-19 is that if our lungs are weaker because we are, let's say, breathing polluted air produced by my private mobility, well, that's something that was able to let's say to make some part of the world more dangerous. So we know that there are cities like Milano or Wuhan in China or Madrid where the pandemic contagion was stronger also because, let's say, basically we were more exposed, and the polluted air was a very, let's say, serious and dangerous presence and a reason to make our body weaker in the capacity to react to the contagion. So it's a very complex issue, but I think we have to do our best also from that point of view.
We have two questions from people watching the talk. One is from MA, and he asks, or he or she asks, do you think the ideas contained in Green Obsession should be taught in schools?
It's a good question. I love to think that. So I think what the subtitle of the book is, it's trees toward cities and human toward forest. And the reason is simple. We cannot simply, let's say, make our cities greener. We have to take care of forests because forest needs human presence, not as let's builders of construction of buildings or streets and so, not at all, but has someone who can make forest more in condition to become richer of biodiversity, for instance. So, we have to learn how probably 100, 200 years ago, our relatives were able to do, how to maintain a forest, how to act as a farmer without, let's say, introduce, let's say, unsustainable components in our activities, in agricultural activities. So it's an oscillation between making cities greener and making forest and defend forest and protect forest and making them more capable to accept our presence as part of nature, because we are part of nature. So we should be also become more able to be part of forests.
There's a question from Andrew Mole. I'm not sure whether he knows something that I don't know, but he says, are you using blockchain with wooden structures? I mean, maybe we could broaden that question and say, okay, everyone knows what a tree is, everyone knows what a bush is or a flower, but how does technology fit into this this story, like blockchain and cryptocurrencies and all the new digital technologies that are coming forwards?
Well, this is a very important issue. I think we're still exploring this possible use. At the same time, we are also, let's say, exploring how metaverse could become, let's say, a segment of our activity. I think it will never become the core of what we can do, but in a certain way, also in terms of communication and capacity to, let's say, to transform what we do in a message. Also, the use of metaverse could become interesting. Well, blockchain it's important that if you observe it at the scale of the kind of circular economy that you can create from the use of, let's say, wooden panel for fabrication, the presence of forest where you can find the timber and the wood that you need for creating wooden panels, and the presence of industrial settlement of factories that are transforming the trees in prefabricated wooden panels. So there's a kind of circularity that could become also a model for let's say, I believe, a right application of the concept of blockchain. Why not? Super interesting.
Final question from me. There are so many problems in the world. It's easy to get depressed. Are you optimistic? Are you optimistic that the solutions that you're exploring can make a difference to the world?
Marcus, I think we have to be optimistic, but for one simple reason, because if we use, and this is also what Paul Oken is saying in this book, if we are, let's say, transmitted simply a message which is about concern and dangers, we will not be able to convince people to change. So we need to show that the idea of to do what we can do in order to reverse climate change is not about suffering, is not about avoiding danger, but it's also about improving our life, because that's true. So if we make a city greener, we do something which makes our city better from many other point of view. If we change our lifestyle, we can improve our way of experiencing our relation with the others. We have to be positive. We have to be optimistic, because this is a unique way to make what we think, let's say, really capable to convince. So I think we have really to abandon all what is about this rhetoric of dangers, and to show that it's possible to improve the quality of life through our profession as architects.
Thank you very much, Stefano. That's a great note to end on. Thank you very much for the book and for your optimism.
Yes, thank you.